The government has been espousing the cause of a taxpayer-friendly, simplified, non-adversarial taxation regime. But the fact does remain that simplification on one hand and the challenges that new age economic business models which really are transnational bring about its own challenges in terms of how any legislature in the world can potentially address them. And in this context, it would be interesting to see in terms of what the finance minister does in respect of the recommendations of POEM, whether he's going to defer it by a year, how some of the feedback on the guidelines will be addressed in this respect needs to be seen. Moving ahead in respect of BEPS, a lot has been said and spoken about the recommendations which have finally come out of the working groups. As far as India is concerned, we would be curious in respect of how many of these will be done either through a bilateral or multilateral treaty or negotiations, and how many of them will be imposed on a unilateral basis. The significant concerns that we have are in respect of reporting, especially in context of how this would be used by the revenue authorities. Admittedly, the BEPS recommendations do allow countries to have their own anti-abuse provisions to be enshrined in the domestic law, but they also talk about good practices where a taxpayer who is aggrieved by the imposition of such provisions, especially where it leads to treaty denial, can invoke the provisions of a mutual agreement process to be able to address it. We are curious to see whether these best practices are invoked by the government. Overall, it is easier to attain simplification when it comes to procedural aspects as compared to those relating to the more substantive ones. We have had an Ishwar Committee report which deals with simplifications mainly on the procedural aspects. We expect that most of these recommendations would be accepted by the legislature. And of course, there has been a lot which has been done by this government over the past 1 year to clearly indicate that it's moving in the right direction in terms of at least as far as interface between the taxpayer and the revenue is concerned, and with the better use of technology. Overall, moving ahead from the promises and the statements which were made in the previous year, with those relating to reduction in the corporate tax rate, in terms of how they would marry with the removal or the phasing out of the exemptions and tax holidays, the forthcoming budget will provide further insights into that.